Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Merry day after Christmas, everybody.
Or merry month after Christmas if you don't listen to these podcasts on time. Or merry 5 months after Christmas.
Yeah, really. No kidding. We're actually recording this the day before Christmas.
Oh.
It's kind of fun. Kind of fun sitting down here to record. And
Are you excited about Christmas?
I
Should we tell everybody about the conundrum you're in?
Which conundrum? Many a conundrum.
The present conundrum.
Yeah. Now Christmas is. I'm happy about Christmas right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm got so many things to be grateful for over this entire year. Really, really incredible stuff has happened.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something I want to talk about on the podcast today.
Ooh.
I think this is going to be one of my favorite podcasts we do all year.
I agree. Absolutely. And it's a feel-good podcast.
It is a feel-good podcast, which some of you might need, especially if Christmas wasn't fun for you.
Yeah.
But it's going to set the tone for your whole next year.
It really is.
Yeah,
Really,
it's
really
going to be a
is.
really vital podcast. And it's going to be a podcast on gratitude.
Mm.
But I think...
And the resource of it. I want to, before we even, it's not going to be a cliche podcast about gratitude.
It is not going to be cliche.
I want to jump into talking about your nervous system and learning we talked about resource a little bit in the past few episodes before Christmas.
Kind of defining what resource is.
And basically, our nervous system, like our bodies are experiencing everything we go through all the time.
Yeah.
I know it sounds like a dumb statement to make, but like they are experiencing the highs and the lows. The body is experiencing it, and it is recording it. And oftentimes our bodies can get stuck in a rut.
Yeah.
Or can get stuck in a cycle where it's repeating the same, like you have anxiety a bunch and it repeats the anxiety. And so your body can hold on to emotions and experiences longer than your brain wants to. I remember doing counseling for years where we would talk through and process through all of whatever the trauma thing is that I went through. We'd be talking through it. And I'd do that over and 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 over. And it would still be something that I was struggling with a lot. It took a long time for that to happen. And most of the breakthrough seasons that I have had in my life included my body actually getting free from the intensity that it was experiencing. And so I was talking to some people in our course. We run courses all the time. And I was teaching about how your nervous system is like a bank account.
Yeah.
And so if you're having adrenaline spikes, you actually need something that we'll call that like debts on your nervous system. You need to be inputting things in your nervous system.
Instead of creating just debts on your nervous system all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Debts on your body, like the chaos of your body. And so it's interesting because I would say I'm a big proponent in pleasure more than I ever have been before. Like how important it is to experience pleasure in your body.
And actually absorb it. Not just like have a pleasurable experience, but be present with pleasure in a way that it's like almost gets encoded. The experiences start getting encoded in you where you're so fully present that it starts building a bank account up of goodness, which is
in
that
your
resource.
nervous system.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like it's kind of like we can train our nervous system to be on high alert and to be on edge and shooting adrenaline and holding stress and holding chaos all the time. Or we can train our nervous system to let go to peace, to feel surrendered, to relax, to feel good inside. And so one of the ways this year that is me transforming gratitude into learning how to change my body with the gratitude.
Yeah.
Like actually digging into the resource of gratitude. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
But I don't want to jump into that because it looks like you have something to say.
I do have something to say. On the note of gratitude, I had someone write something to me. I haven't read it to you. This is going to be the first time you hear this. But I want to read this because I think that this is very. When I read this, I actually cried. First time I read this because
you did?
It was for me it was very impactful getting to
So when I don't cry, I'll look like the cold heartless part of our story. Okay.
Well, you are icy hearted. That's not true. You're not icy hearted. I'm being playful. You were definitely icy hearted.
It's true.
At some very strong levels early on, but not now. A bunch of feels. You can touch on that resource, can't you?
Yeah.
So here we go. So this person wrote in, kind of gave me a preface. I'll just kind of jump from the preface. So you're all kind of wondering what's going on here as it goes in, but that'll be kind of the premise of how this goes. And it just launches into, now this was written by a woman who had, I just kind of get the tone and understand kind of a perspective in the back of your head. Okay. So she writes, when Mariah said, if you use drugs for the rest of your life, you still deserve love. When I showed up high and Tyler said that the you that's right here now is more than enough. When I made a post, which prompted Justin to call me specifically and ask questions about my life and articulated words and emotions I wasn't able to articulate myself, he said, your reaction to life makes so much sense. When Abby said you actually deserve compassion for the choices you've made, it was the only way you knew how to survive. When hundreds of people met me on Zoom with love instead of the same disgust I have for myself. When Jesus said you can't heal from a secret in secret, asking me to humble myself and ask for help. That I won't do this alone. I'll never do this alone because he loves me. And when I decided to believe I can do hard things, that's when it happened. I never would have made it here, and I never taken LFA, had I never obeyed the voice of the Lord and the tug he placed on my heart. I owe this milestone to Papa God because this should have been harder than it was. Initially, it was painstakingly hard, but after the first step, he carried me all the way through. So faithful, so kind, so merciful and patient. So loving and sweet, so comforting in every way. I owe this milestone to Justin and Abby that created a program and equipped all the people who mentored us that teaches you self-compassion, self-love, and forgiveness, and supplied me with the new tools to move forward. I owe this milestone to all of those who poured love into me when I had none for myself, who poured finances into me when I needed to get help, who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And for those of you who have continuously prayed for me and encouraged me the entire way. And I owe this milestone to myself for the perseverance, compassion, and grit it took to see this through. LFA was totally worth it. I won't lie and say it's for the faint of heart, as I had to face things I had been running from for years and some things I didn't even know existed. However, we get to choose our hard. We can stay where we are, which is painful and hard and keeps you in bondage, or face it head on, one step at a time, which is also painful and hard, but will offer you peace and freedom. And isn't that exactly what we want? And then a picture post that says, I've been opiate free for 1 year. Opiate free for 1 year. I just got hit so hard that the power of love is so impactful, of an entire community of people that sits down and looks someone in the eyes and says, I see you. You make sense. I'm here for you inside of this process. Like when we're willing to say yes, because I looked at it and I was like, she was willing to start to surrender to love. Like she was willing to surrender to a prompting from the Father to participate in something. Like, yeah, it was living fully alive, but whatever the invitation was, it could have been something else that God's like, no, I have something for you. Just follow me on this. And as she was willing to continually say yes to each moment where someone said, I accept you and I see you beyond your drug addiction. I mean, like to get up 1 year free from opiates is insane. To get off opiates like that. But that's what the power of love does. Like people sit back and they feel like their life will forever be broken in a specific way. But something can so radically happen when we say yes to the journey of love towards ourselves and allowing others love us in those ways. Not just loving ourselves, letting others love us, getting connected to love for our history and our present. And like when I first read that, I just got so wrecked to see that someone, I mean, obviously it touched me that living fully alive was like one of the things and what we've stewarded inside of this. But, and that's worth saying. I mean, obviously I'm talking about this because living fully alive is coming up here and that's a part of it. But I actually just got really impacted that like someone came out of something that's almost impossible for them to come out of. And so it's a message to people like that are out there listening in this season, like, there is actually steps out of no matter what situation you're in, no matter how heavy, no matter how dark, no matter how difficult it is. Yes, it is difficult. She was right. Like no matter what, it's going to be difficult, but you can choose what difficult you want to choose. And you can choose the difficult of getting out of things that are really heavy and painful and find love that heals you along the way. So.
Yeah, it's, I do think it's so beautiful. One of the thoughts that I've had just that has echoed so much for me this year, the hope I've had is that I can always change.
Yeah.
I know that sounds weird, but I've just been thinking like I have been so aware of my humanity the last few years, so aware of all of the ways that I have trauma responses, all of the reasons I do things I don't want to do or react in ways I don't want to react. So aware of my messiness. That's why we branded the podcast right. We branded ourselves right. I was like, I think the smartest thing I've ever done in my life is that we branded ourselves as messy.
Yeah.
We can live up to that.
Yeah, I can live up to the standard of messy. Like I'm going to mess up.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do things right. I'm going to fail.
100%.
And so like there's no pedestal
yeah.
for us.
Yeah. And so I've been so aware of my humanity this year. And the thing that gives me hope all the time is like, this might be where I'm at now, but I can grow.
Yeah.
And I can change. And I might be hurting these people in this way, but I can become like, I can heal. And the ability to know that, and I've watched it at work. This is like an interesting tangent, but I've seen employees at work that everybody's really frustrated at because they have an attitude issue or they're not working hard or whatever. And I've seen that like maybe sometimes the managers will confront the employees and some of the employees will respond really well and like transform how they show up at work, and people transform what they think about them. Like they're not stuck forever in how they behave for a while. When people start to change either their attitude or their work ethic, people around them start to change their opinions of them. Yeah. And it begins to have a ripple effect. And I've just been thinking how awesome it is that at any point in our life, we can change.
Yes.
We can grow, we can become more, and it can transform the people around us. It can transform our interactions with the world.
Yeah.
Like that feels so hopeful to me when I'm like, yeah, gosh, there's a lot of things that I need to grow in still. And every step I take towards wholeness is going to keep bringing my life into more and more fruit, to more and more peace, to more and more love.
Well, and it's a conversation that reaches into the idea of redemption. And this is all part of the gratitude conversation that we're having, but it's like there is redemption no matter what stage in life you're in, no matter how bad it's been. You can participate in a reconciliation and restoration process for yourself and for the environment around you. Mm-hmm. And you can see redemption take place. So you can be in your 70s. You could be listening to this right now and be like, I'm 70 years old. I've made a whole mess of my life. That doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. There's a redemption available to you and miraculous redemption. And it's like, you hear a story of someone like this who's like, oh, I was on opiates. Like I was on really heavy drugs that it's not easy to come off of. Yet in 1 year, my whole life could, like at 70 years old, in 1 year, your whole life can turn around. It doesn't mean that everything's suddenly fixed and a magic wand has been waved after 1 year. And there's tons of stuff to still work through in that. But in 1 year, you can be looking back going, no, like I made an impact not only on the way that I chose to show up in life, but I made a massive impact on the environment around me.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people who are in their 70s, late 60s, early 70s, who choose a transformation journey, who choose into love.
It changes the ripple effects are extraordinary,
especially because, like, let's put it this way, the crappier you've been in life to people, the more impactful any change is. I mean, it's simple. Like, just a phone call of "I'm sorry that I did this" is people are like, "Oh my God, he said sorry. It's been 70 years of him being a jerk."
Totally. Very true.
Whatever. And so even to the degree of messiness that you've had inside of your life, like even if it's enormous, the more enormous it is, sometimes the less it takes to repair things.
Yeah.
In the sense of like little moves for other people feel big for you and for the people around you when it's been like that.
Yeah. I think it's why I
was going to say one other thing. When my grandpa finally said, "I love you" to family members, I mean, like, their whole life they were starved of the three words "I love you," and at one point close to his deathbed he decides to deliver them. I got him earlier on, but everyone was shocked, like, "I love you." Poof, oh my God. He didn't need 10,000 "I love yous." It was "I love you" once.
It's a sad and good story all at once.
That is depressing. So exciting that they finally got "I love you."
Yeah, it's so true. I was thinking about, if you've been listening, you know that probably like 4 years ago, my whole life kind of fell apart. And I have been working through PTSD symptoms ever since then and have made a good amount of progress, which I feel proud of. And I'm still going on the healing journey out. But one of the things that you become aware of is how important your relationship with yourself and your relationship with love is.
Yeah.
Like your ability to connect to love. Trauma disconnects us from love. Like, I think that that's one of the main things that happens, whether it was childhood trauma or something you've experienced as an adult. And that repair connection back to love is what is healing. And I think that's why I think it's the only reason why I was able to go through the journey that I've gone through and be where I'm at is because of my understanding of the repair with yourself and the repair with love. And that is what living fully alive is. It's taking you on the journey to repair the relationship with yourself and the relationship with love that you have, the tears, the walls, the fractures, the places where love is felt far away. It's bringing that back into place. And so I love that girl's story so much. It's what we hear all of the time. And we have spent years and years and years pouring into the people who help our I was going to call them concerts.
Consultants?
No.
Our clients?
Our courses. Our courses. Our
Oh.
concerts. We've spent years pouring into them. It is a culture where there's so many people that are going to rally for you to connect to love, for you to be involved. And it's a beautiful transformation process. You don't have to find your way to love on your own.
Yeah. And with that said, like, going back into the whole gratitude aspect of it is like part of love is having gratitude for our own life. You know, part of connecting to love is being able to connect to the gratitude of like even being alive. Like, I'm just thankful I'm alive. And a lot of times we're not actually even thankful to be here.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have gratitude for the fact that we were given this miraculous gift to experience this life right in front of us.
Yeah. I very rarely feel that kind of connection to gratitude.
Yeah. And so the more that we can get connected to being grateful for our life, it's this essence of like loving ourselves, being grateful for everything that is here in front of me. And so I really want to go deeper into the power of gratitude and how it's actually something that, like, when we get connected to gratitude, it is a way of loving ourselves. It is a way of loving the life right in front of us. Like, you can't love what you don't have gratitude for.
Yeah.
You just can't. There has to be gratefulness for it. And honestly, my love for myself and the people around me, the more that I started seeing the beauty, the more that I started like being like, oh, this is actually a gift. This is something special. All of that started like raising for me.
Yeah. I do just want to say this. You got to sign up for Living Fully Alive right away because it's like we're countdown. It's about to start.
Yeah. January 11th, we go live with it. Like it starts completely. So
go to justinandabby.com and sign up. And the immersion program is what I recommend most. A lot of people don't do it and they don't do the course.
Yeah.
It helps you actually do the work, and you get to be loved by people going through it. You get to feel seen and known, and it really, really helps. So for gratitude, I want to go back to like the body thing. The more you can so I work with my counselor. If I was to describe my life, it was like a giant hole opened up in my chest for a few years. And I thought I will never, ever live without this feeling of this giant hole inside of me. And we are slowly working on rebuilding, like packing. I almost like imagine it like packing the dirt back in the hole, like filling in the hole. And one of the things that we most often do is go into a memory or a feeling or a gratitude thing, and then pay attention to the body sensations around it and really explore it.
Yeah.
So like me and you went for a ride in a convertible the other day.
Yeah, that was so good.
Yeah, it was so much fun. And so in my counseling session, we're literally like sitting there and I'm visualizing being in that convertible ride with you. And I'm remembering like the body sensations, what it felt like to have the sun on my skin, the wind through my hair, what it felt like to be listening to relaxing, good music, feeling like I was with you, but also like we were kind of in our own world. Like it was both.
Yeah.
I didn't feel alone, but I also felt like connected to myself.
Yeah.
We weren't super talking. We were listening to music and enjoying the ride.
Yeah.
And so I was feeling that feeling and then imagining what it felt like in my body to have it like relaxed, to know like I'm just having a nice ride right now. I'm not having to run a marathon. I'm not having to do everything. I'm literally just, and so we spent time actually imagining what that felt like.
Yeah.
And then even like spending time imagining bringing other people into the car that really love me, into the convertible, and then just feeling the feelings of what does it feel like to feel loved, to feel connected, to have a positive experience. Like we spent, a good 15 minutes doing that, which is eternity if you are visualizing something. But that's the every time your body and your emotions can connect into that regulated place, you're retraining your body's nervous system to be able to regulate, to be able to recognize that feeling of regulation, to be able to go to that feeling. Like the more you sense in your body and your mind that feeling that comes with gratitude. So we're going to talk about things that we've been thankful for this year. But when we've done this for years. If we're having a hard day or whatever, we'll start to play the thankful game.
Yeah.
When you start to be grateful, there's something that happens in your body where it starts to feel like good things are happening, or like that you're okay, or that you're safe. And it allows your nervous system to take a break. And that is really, really helpful for every single human.
Yeah. I remember back when I first started really digging into gratitude, I think it was very easy for me to not have gratitude, especially in my early 20s. I was very much like,
I think it's easy for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, the world is...
We get consumed with what isn't happening.
Well, yeah. Also, it's very easy to look at the world and go, okay, the world's a dumpster fire.
Totally. Yes.
A terrible, stinky dumpster fire. And here's all the terrible things that are happening. And especially more intensified after a life of COVID, and how dark that was for some people and difficult that was for some people, and the losses that people took through that process. Like, it's very easy to get lost in that. And one of the things that happens for a lot of people that come into my office space and that we work with, they don't want to face the pain of disappointment anymore. You get enough pain and enough losses that you're just like, I don't need an extra pain. So if I decide that the world is crap, then I've set my expectations so low that that like the most basic thing is enjoyable. Like none of my expectations are being destroyed. I don't have to have connection to people. Like I even have people be like, I don't want to be thankful for the people around me because they might die, they might leave, they might reject me and all of that stuff. But what you actually do is when you...
The fear of if I really receive something good, it'll be taken away.
And I get really grateful for it and enjoy the fullness of it. Yep.
Oh, that is so real. Even when you're talking about it, I can feel it in my body.
Yeah.
That panic of like, I remember when I married you, I was like, I don't want to love you too much because then what happens if something happens?
That is a real thing. Abby always planned for me to die soon. She was like, I'm figuring out a secret option B in the back of my head for when you die. Where do I go? Who do I marry?
I didn't have a plan for who I married. I just was like, I need to have a plan. I'm going to go live with Pizza is my plan.
Yeah, totally. But it is a thing that what we do is when we cut ourselves off from gratitude and love, we end up exacerbating the pain that's already there.
And we repeat the pain cycles.
Yeah, over and over again. We can't get resolution to it. It actually keeps growing. Like we don't think it's growing, but it actually is growing. Because what it creates is a sense of aloneness, abandonment. Oh, I'm an orphan living in this world all alone. No one loves me. I don't love anyone else. Nothing good is going on. And it like our world becomes very small and very, very painful inside of it. So
well, and whatever we focus on grows, and whatever energy we're in, as in like when I believe everything's going to fall apart, I actually constantly make choices that align with that.
Totally.
When I believe that everyone's going to leave me, I actually subconsciously find the people that probably have a higher chance of leaving me. Like there's the getting into gratitude actually pulls our life. We have a better chance of transforming our cycles and patterns.
Totally. So for me, I was definitely someone who was like, dude, the world is crap. I don't want to have any expectations. I'm just going to live it. So I know that monster all too well.
Yeah.
And so what it created was a what's the point monster. It fed what's the point monster. So that, I mean, like, it gets dark, but it led down a road of suicidal ideation because eventually it's like, well, if there is no love and there is no hope for anything, so what's the point of this life anyways? Yeah. So the what's the point monster is growling in the back of your head consistently. And then you're like, well, I might as well just die. Why am I here? If there's no point to life, if there's no goodness that exists, because you tell that narrative to your soul enough, and like the little kid inside of you is then like, why am I here then? This is madness. Get me out. But what we want to do is actually begin to see the beauty that exists inside of all the darkness, because there's an immense amount of light all around us. And I remember after we got married, we were listening to a teaching, an audio teaching from like this financial coach. And he was talking about how he had been homeless and he had absolutely nothing. He was living on the streets
but he was reading about the power of gratitude.
Yep.
Every self-help book has gratitude as one of the main pillars.
He totally was consuming those. And he was sitting there one day. He might have been in a library.
Yeah, he was in a library.
He was talking about, because I think he went to the library, got a free library. He got the library card, and that's how he started reading the books, because he didn't have money to buy books. So he started going there. And so he's got a pencil, and he started looking at this pencil, and he started thinking about all the things he could do with this pencil. And he started getting very deeply grateful for the pencil and the power of it, and the thoughts that he could write out and whatever. But it began this journey of him to creating wealth inside of his life, because all of a sudden he could see the endless possibilities. Because what gratitude does, it doesn't give you a false sense of hope. It gives you a reality check of what's truly available. Not only what I currently have, but the possibility of what can happen all of a sudden. And then it starts generating this whole movement for you where all of a sudden life is for you. People are for you. You begin creating these connected relationships where you're like, no, people want to help me. I'm grateful for them. They're going to be grateful for me. And it begins this, it starts wiring, like we were talking about earlier, love. Because all of a sudden you go, oh, love is all around me. There's goodness all around me. And that's, for me, started ripping blindness off of my eyes. So most of us that like, okay, people call themselves either realists or pessimists or optimists, and like, oh, you're just being optimistic or you're just being pessimistic. But no, it's actually a reality of a perspective that we have. What are you doing there?
I was making a note about things that you're talking about that I didn't want to forget because I have ADD.
I was like, what is happening? I was like, I need to just say this out loud because my brain's getting distracted.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's totally okay. But there's these categories of people who will go, no, I'm just being realistic. No, you're being realistic based on your pessimism, based on your protection mechanism of like, I don't want to feel pain. So I'm going to call this being realistic. No, realistically, the world's crappy and people are going to like totally betray you and things aren't going to work out for you. Yeah, those things are going to happen, but the energy that you have charged behind it, which is this, you're in agreement with that's what life is versus like, oh, that can happen, but that's not what my life is. That's not the norm. That's not the overarching energy that my life is going to have. And so that sometimes we'll mock these optimists. I know that I was someone who mocked, oh, you're just being super overly optimistic about it. But it's like, no, they're in agreement with an energy that said, yeah, I'm not ignoring the fact that life has darkness in it. It's that I'm more consumed with the goodness and light of life that's right in front of me. And I'm going to begin to approach life in that manner. And I'm going to draw people with that mindset and opportunities with that mindset. I'm going to create a world that supports that. And what ultimately happened for this guy is he became a very wealthy multimillionaire entrepreneur, but he had to step out of the darkness and connect to love, beginning with gratitude.
Yeah. And so the way he did it was that the only thing he owned was a pencil.
That was it.
And so he started just by spending time thinking about how thankful he was that he owned a pencil.
It can begin as simple as you're listening to our words and you can go, I have access to a device that allows me to listen to a podcast that has hope on it. And I can just sit and marinate on the simplicity of that.
Yeah.
If nothing else, and move from there.
I mean, definitely you could just think, I'm so thankful I found Justin and Abby. They're the best thing that ever happened to me. They're the best.
That's what I meant. Think about how awesome we are. That's what this podcast is about. Have gratitude for the connected life. But it's very easy to have stuff in front of you that like, what I began to notice in my life is that all around me, there was goodness. No matter how difficult stuff was, there was a million situations where when we were broke and we didn't have barely a dime to our name, there were relationships and opportunities and gifts that were always flooding into our life to take care of us, to make sure that we had food on the table, to make sure that there was a covering over the top of our heads. And I was like, I became significantly more aware of the reality of God through that process.
Well, and I will say this, talking about somebody who's gone through trauma, I went through so much traumatic loss at once that it was all consuming to me. My body and my brain was consumed with thinking about all that I didn't have. Yeah. Because so many things happened at once that just took me out. And so it's interesting because I feel like I learned the lessons years ago of things like connecting to love and gratitude and your relationship with yourself. And then it feels like you have to relearn everything. Once your world gets so disoriented, you have to reestablish all of the pieces again. And to me, it started with a muscle and a discipline to be grateful, because it's so hard when your brain naturally, like your brain will go into confirmation bias. And so when you're in a season of loss, it's just gathering all the things you're losing.
Completely.
And that's normal. It's how our brains are built to protect us. It just ends up hurting us. It keeps us in survival mode. And so the idea of actually being thankful and grateful is one of the ways that you can break the cycle. You can break the cycle of negativity. Yeah. You can break the cycle of hopelessness. You can break the cycle of depression. You can break the cycle of anxiety. Gratitude is one of those things that is really good for everyone. Yeah. So let's talk about a few of the things that we do to feel grateful, or the things that we're thankful for.
Yeah, I would love to. Do you have anything you want to start out with?
No, you start.
Okay. Well, let's see. I was thinking about like the difficulties that you've had with your body, right? Yeah. And there's been a lot of them. We've talked about it so much on this podcast. People are like, know that they have problems. But there's been multiple trips to Spain that we've been able to take. Mm-hmm. And in difficult circumstances that both like led to very deep wells of pain for me watching you go through sickness. There was also an equal answer. And this year we got to go on a trip to Spain, and we had the financial ability to go there and get the treatments that were going to take care of your body. I mean, that stuff is all out of pocket. Like, there's so many things that have been out of pocket, but there's been ways to take care of you and myself when it looked like dire situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Last year at this time, I had just tried a treatment for a big infection that I had that was supposed to be side effect free and fine.
It was supposed to save you from a really life-threatening bacteria or virus in your belly.
And it
did get rid of that.
It did get rid of that. It also destroyed my body.
Yeah, your gut biome and stuff went off.
Well, it destroyed everything. My whole body stopped working the way that it was. So this year, I've had to do more treatments than I've done more trips for treatments this year than I ever have.
Yeah.
Went to Spain, and I've gone to San Diego, I think probably like 7 times at least.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
Yeah. And every trip I've had friends go with me for treatments. And that is miraculous. That's not a common thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been sick for years. It's not common even in my own story.
Yeah, there's been a lot of support.
Mm-hmm. There's been
a lot of support.
And like randomly, like I think about how crazy that I found a doctor in San Diego when I didn't know that like 2 of my best friends were moving. Like one of my best friends had already moved there, Marcus and Bree. But then Bryant ended up moving there this year. Yeah. And so I always have them to see. And then I also have friends that go with me regularly to every treatment. I mean, it's just beautiful.
And that's not just putting a spin on something. It's about seeing the beauty in the midst of difficulties. Mm-hmm. And again, that's what gratitude is gratitude doesn't ignore difficulties. It's not a case for more denial. Mm-hmm. It's actually just seeing what like the light at the end of the tunnel, the silver lining, the beauty in the midst of the mess.
Yeah.
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 Did you have something, or did you want me to share something else?
No, you keep going.
You know, someone that a lot of people in my heart, when I think about gratitude for this year, it's about people. And that's something that you were kind of stressing there was like the people that surrounded you as well in that journey. But I can't help but think of my counselor, Barry, who's been on the podcast here. Because Barry has been with us for, well, especially me, for almost 2 years now. Yeah. 2 years tracking
at least
with
2,
me.
maybe 3.
No, 2.
Okay.
And honestly, my time with him probably saved our marriage. Like it really did. Like, it was such a safe place for me to process myself. And, you know, we've gone through a lot. I'm thankful that we're even still married, because we've gone through some enormous difficulties processing a lot of our early behavior and then getting out of cycles of how we operate, have still operated in that behavior, both of us. And having someone who's been so kind and tender, non-vilifying, and he's just like, I see you both, I see you, being able to deeply validate me inside of stuff. It's kind of like, I talk often about Paul Young and how he's been an impact on my life. And that's something that's always a consistent value in the overarching thing of my life. But especially this last year, Barry was like a Paul Young type experience where, always a lot of gentleness, but there's a lot of power in like how he's helped me navigate things like, oh, here's some ways that you can approach this thing that's through kindness, but it's very powerful in kindness, how to manage stuff.
Well, it's interesting. Something you're talking about, I think, is so true, is that often in our dark seasons or our intense ones, often in those, the light of love is so much more meaningful.
It really is.
Or the light of hope is so much more meaningful.
You can be so dismissive when things seem to be so good of all the goodness that's around you, and just be more all consumed with getting more goodness, you know, like not satisfied. But when darkness truly hits, you're like, oh my God
for that crumb of light.
Yeah.
It feels so good.
It's like, you're not,
Well, it's like we can drink water all day, every day, and nobody's thinking, "Oh God, I'm so thankful for
until
this
you're
water."
in a desert.
Until you're in a desert, or you run a marathon or whatever, and you're like,
And
"Oh my God, I
literally
need water so
licking
bad."
sweat off your own face.
Yeah, this is what gratitude is. Gratitude is the journey of learning how to be nourished by water all the time.
Yeah.
Instead of just
even
the
when there's not a
moments.
drought. And that's
Yeah.
something that I've come to a point of like, I don't need a drought to be constantly being like, oh, I'm so thankful. They're so wonderful, because I know what it is to be in a drought.
Yeah.
Even when there's abundance.
Well, in gratitude, whether you're in a hard season or not, gratitude builds resilience so you can actually process the pain of life easier if you're having something that pulls you back up into joy and hope and love and goodness. And that's what gratitude does. It literally gives us grit. It gives us the ability for resilience.
Yeah. 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 I think about even on the back end of that, you're talking about the ability for resilience with gratitude and people who are helping build resilience. Like Barry was one of them. I think about people like Johnny and Pizzi and like Courtney or Ruth or Marcus. These are people that I have deep gratitude through this whole year because they helped like build resilience inside of me, knowing that I'm not alone, knowing that they're for me, that they see me. And it's just like, I can be like, it's created this sense of I can have victory over anything in my life because of the beautiful people that I've surrounded myself with.
Yeah. You know, an interesting feeling that I'm having when you're talking is that like, I've actually been, so we both made kind of grateful lists for this year. And one of the things that I wrote, which I don't know how to say this, is like all of a sudden things matter to me again. The amount of pain that I went through has made things matter. Like kindness from people affects me on a really deep level. People saying kind things about me affects me on a really deep level. Having friends, just having friends. Like there's seasons where you're like, I have friends, and you don't even think about that. That's an awesome thing, and that gives you strength and that provides support. But if you're in a season of utter brokenness, you're like, oh my God, I have friends. That's so amazing. That's like one of the best things in life. And if you're in a season where something has been taken away, like I wouldn't wish this for people because I think trauma sucks. But there's something so beautiful about being at that place where every morsel of goodness matters to you.
Yeah.
Like I remember seasons where like I loved my friends, but I wasn't like, oh my gosh, thank God for my friends. And in this season, I'm like, thank God I'm surviving because of friends.
Yeah. Because of the care, the kindness, the understanding, any level of support, they're there.
I remember like when things happened with my mom and I started losing her. You know, there's a song, you don't know what you got till it's gone. They paved paradise and put up a parking lot. I remember when I lost my mom, I started being thankful. Like yesterday, I was getting my toenails done at the nail salon, and there was this lady who was next to me, and she just felt motherly. Like she was like sweet, and she just felt motherly. And so I just talked to her. We just talked about life, and she had a very different life experience than me. You know, her mom was 90 and like driving around and exercising, doing all kinds of crazy stuff, like very active. And then her daughter, she was like really good. Like they're all best friends, the mom, the grandma, the daughter. And they had this like Gilmore Girls story, I think, except that there was a husband. But
which, by the way, you could have been very bitter about hearing this story.
Yeah. But I just thought like how beautiful that some people out there get to experience the safety of having a mom. Like I was just imagining what it'd be like to have a mom she was probably in her 60s or 70s, like having a mom that's still alive. She's like, yeah, my mom's my best friend. We talk every day. We go on trips together. And I like was like, I can't even imagine what it would be like to feel that. But the idea was I was allowing myself to imagine the good feelings in her life, and I was partaking of that for me. And I walked away being like, what a sweet interaction with a mom. I just got to experience. I had this other interaction. This woman, I met her at a coffee shop, and she was my friend's mom, and she was so nurturing. Actually, I can say 3 different times this year. I met moms in random places. One was at a restaurant. One was at a coffee shop, and then one was at the nail salon. And I met moms who just exuded kind of momness.
Yeah.
And I felt like so impacted by just getting to be around a mom that felt motherly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It felt like so beautiful. And you know, if I hadn't gone through stuff with my mom, I don't even know that I would have even noticed those moments.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have even been excited or like feasted on them or allowed myself to feel good in those.
Yeah. And imagine how much we're constantly missing out on because of lack of being present and lack of awareness of what is good, what our souls do need. Because like when something gets taken away, you realize what your soul needs. You realize you need relationship. You realize you need connection, nurturing
parents.
Yes. Yeah. And once it's gone, then you go, oh, that's part of the deepest part of our core human experience. And once I actually am aware of what I need, all of a sudden you realize how much is all around you. Yeah. It's just a huge deal. It changes the game, and it's very empowering.
Yeah.
Again, going back to me saying we're not alone.
And what I want to go back to is like, I just named 3 experiences where I just talked to somebody for like 5 minutes.
Yeah. It wasn't
like, and then I had a mom and she bought me a new car and she came and listened to every moment about my entire life story. Like it wasn't like those.
No. Not at all.
And that's what gratefulness can be, is it doesn't have to be these huge things. You can find something.
You can borrow the beauty
day
from other people's stories and allow it to leave an impact on you. I think that's so good. I think about, I do want to say this other one because we're talking relational. And I had my friend Heather, who's been a sister to me since before we were together, about 2 years before we were together. So 17, 18 years, maybe.
Yeah. Crazy.
Something like that. And we went through a season where I told her like, oh, I can't continue to participate at this level of connection with you because I'm watching you go through some difficult things that are self-imposed difficulties that I'm really scared of the loss of you. And that would make more sense in a deeper conversation. She always listens, so she'll hear this. So then she gets it. And I deeply love, like, she's family to me, forever family to me. But because of it, she almost died over
couple years ago.
Yeah, within the last year and a half. And it was like this, I couldn't even look at it because I so deeply love her. She's intertwined into my story so much that I'm like, she was going through all of it, I'm like, I can't even make a phone call to have the conversation because the ache is so big right now. But she called me up this year after everything, a lot of beauty with doctors and miracles and opportunities happened that got her through it. And she called me up and it was like, I want to say sorry for things. And I want to say that, I want to talk about how you love me and what your love that you expressed was actually really necessary for me to hear, and the challenges that you brought to the table. But it was like beautiful. Like I was being so impacted by her showing up. Like it wrecked me, her coming to the table and being like, I see you. I see how you were actually radically loving me, even in the things that I felt angry about you doing. And it was,
well, and part of the pain point had been in the past that she sometimes would just disappear.
Right.
So her showing up also was a part of that thing that felt loving. And
yeah, absolutely. And my point of this is like, I don't harden my heart to the possibilities of repair.
Yeah.
And stuff, which I think a lot of us in our pain, we do that and we miss out on the opportunity for something really beautiful and something to be real grateful for. And I didn't throw out the relationship that we had. I was like, I'm so grateful for who she's been and the place she holds inside of my heart. But like, I got radically wrecked with gratitude over the fact that not only did she acknowledge like me, the role that I played, the pain that I maybe experienced, but she also acknowledged her love for me and her care for me and value for me. And I was like, oh, I get this person back into my life on new terms, because like when you talk to her now, there's someone who is like really enlightened to the beauty of life in so many aspects because of almost losing it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful for redemption. And I point this out because there's a lot of people out there that have their walls up towards the possibility of restoration and stuff like that in self-protection. And you miss out on the gratitude that you can have of restored relationships and what they can be inside of your life.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you have a belief and an openness to redemption, and you've seen redemption. And I mean, you have so many crazy redemption stories.
Yeah.
Even just like classmates from when you're growing up, or family members, or like it's radical how many redemption stories and full circles you have, but it's because of that openness to it. But anyway, I have loved watching you allow yourself to be impacted by the goodness of redemption stories.
Yeah. And I think even on that note with redemption stories, like I went to my 21-year reunion because they couldn't do it because of COVID last year.
Yeah.
But I had encounters with some of my high school classmates that I just felt so endeared towards. There was so much redemption inside of it. And I was so grateful. Like I went on this journey. There wasn't anything specific that I could say, well, these are the things that happen, except for like, I got to see the beauty of people's lives, and I got some connective moments that were very good for my soul. And I was just very thankful.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been thankful for this year is, things about God feel like they have made more sense to me, which is like a funny thing to say, but you grow up in church, you hear things all the time. It becomes very trite and trivialized. And I've always kind of asked, like, I don't like doing things unless they feel real or authentic to me. And I don't like, I don't like doing things just for the sake of doing things.
Correct.
Yeah. So this year though, the concept of, so when I got PTSD, it became very aware to me, the concept of panic and the concept of fear and the concept of love and needing love. And it became very real to me how much I need a source for love. And when I went through an attachment crisis is what I call it, when you lose all of your primary attachments at once in life. Very rarely do people have a season like that, more than once in life. And some people never experience it, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
But an attachment crisis is, I think, one of the most traumatic things that humans can go through, because attachment is how we feel secure, and belonging is what every human soul needs.
Yeah.
So in going through both panic and an attachment crisis, it became so real to me why we need God. I know that sounds so dumb, but I was like, wait, because there's a source of love that we know will never leave.
Right.
There's a source of love that we know can push out fear.
Can be consistent.
And even like understanding worship and reading the Bible and all those things being a way for us to connect to love.
Yeah.
A way for us to have, and even like learning about my body and needing to be regulated and needing to get my nervous system. I started realizing like, oh my God, it's just so many times where I was in worship or in prayer or listening to somebody, and my body felt that presence of warmth or felt that relaxed place of just being. And I started recognizing like, oh, every human needs to be regulated. Like that's the big, honestly, if we were all regulated, conflict would be completely different. Wars probably wouldn't happen. Like most of our pain comes from dysregulation in life. And realizing, oh, God is an ability, God is a being that we can connect to regulate at any given time. And that sounds easier than it's, easier said than done, because when I'm in a lot of pain, I have a hard time seeing God's love. Pain has a way of almost like eclipsing the love of God.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that as well. Like it's taken me a long time after my life fell apart to even feel God's love. The knowledge of his love felt true, but to feel it has taken, I'm having to thaw into love again to be able to feel it. But I am like now so aware, and even like the more honest you are with yourself, the more honest you are with how many broken places you have. And the more I'm like, how awesome that I have a being that wants to forgive me all the time.
So good.
That has already told me like, if you are so effed up, I still choose you.
Yeah.
Like, and when you do everything wrong, I forgive you. And I still see your most authentic being. Like when no one else understands how crazy you are right now because of the reactions to trauma you're having, but you know who you really are and how that's not getting to show up right now. like God actually knows and sees. God actually cares. And so there's just this ability for me to actually feel the gratitude of having a being whose standard is, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I will never stop choosing you. I will always love you. I'll always see the good in you. I'll always see your most authentic self. I'll always see who you are under all of the ways that you're trying to survive. I'll always be on your team. You know, that thing of like when you don't, when I lost my mom, you no longer have this person who's always on your team.
Right.
Well, now I'm like, thank God there's God. Or there'd be such an infinite aloneness that I would experience. And again, I don't want to trivialize it because it hasn't been like, oh, this magical thing. I just feel God so much. In fact, it was one of the hardest parts of going through traumas. I couldn't feel anything love. So I could not feel God in it. Right. I remember being like, I thought at our lowest points is when we felt God the most. That's not what I experienced in the trauma. And I love Paul Young. He talks about pain is like clipping a bird's wings. Like we forget how to fly because of pain.
Yeah.
And talks about our inability to see God when the pain is so great. And that I like held on to. And so every step towards recovery has allowed me to open my heart back up. But that feeling, again, I'm almost thankful. I'm not thankful for what I went through. God, it is the worst. The last few years have been like living hell on earth for me. But I'm so thankful for it opened me up for gratitude and love and truth and being affectable in a way that I never would have experienced. The ability to be grateful for. When you lose everything, you start to have, well, you don't start to have gratitude. Honestly, when I lost everything, I had just a lot of trauma. But in the repair process, the gentle process of learning to focus on what I'm thankful for, learning to feel goodness every day, learning the gratitude, it has become this beautiful source.
And I think that what you found is that you didn't lose everything. You lost what felt like everything.
Yeah.
But there was like, oh, as you've walked this out, you're like, oh, there was still these people, these situations. God was in this. Like you could see it. But when we have enough of a loss, and I say this for people who are listening, it can feel like you've lost everything.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm there yet. Like what you said, I don't look back and be like, yeah, I didn't lose everything. I look back and I'm like, no, I still feel like I lost everything.
That's totally okay. I'm having a conversation that, totally.
One day when I'm
that.
more healed, I'll probably look back and see that.
You can,
it's not there yet.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And it feels like everything. And I'm just pointing that out is that we can feel like we've lost everything when there's still beauty all around us. And that's what Abby's talking about is she's getting back to being able to see what is and what was even in the midst of all of that stuff. And it's a long, arduous road sometimes.
Well, and this is why I'm going to bring it back to Living Fully Live, because the content we cover in that course is the thing that tethered me to truth. So when I couldn't feel God's love, I know he loves me. When I couldn't feel like he wouldn't, like I didn't feel this overwhelming sense of something, but I knew he won't forsake me. I knew he has compassion on me for what's going on. He sees me when no one else does. He knows me. Like the truth, the forgiveness, we have teachings on all of this stuff in Living Fully Life. The forgiveness one, like understanding God's heart towards me, knowing it in truth, even when I couldn't feel it, tethered me to something.
Yeah.
It was really powerful.
It's really good. Just a couple more things before we get to wrapping it up. I wanted to make a point of like some simple things that I have gratitude for, because I think that one of the things is we look for big monumental moments.
Yeah.
Or monumental opportunities or things rather than like the good little things. Like I think about like our house has a view of mountains. Mm-hmm. And so many times I've sat out there and I've just in the quiet, in the stillness, just stared at those mountains and been like, I get to see this. There's beauty right here.
Yes.
I am sitting here just quietly hanging out by myself. No activities.
Yeah.
Except for being present with the beauty that's set before me. Stuff like that. And then I think about like little things that I've been able to create for myself, like my nerd cave. I won't even call it a man cave. It's a little boy cave. It's filled with action figures.
It is a little boy cave.
And I play some video games, but there's been so many times I've sat down there and even done some of my somatic experience counseling with my counselor in that space. And I'm like, oh, in this space, I can fully feel this is the core place of when I was a little boy.
Yeah.
And I'm in my little boy's experience
Safe
and I'm
place.
safe place. And I'm fully getting to love on that. Like I was able to create a space, a physical space that represented the fullness of my childhood and be able to create repair inside of it and just enjoy action figures. Like it's nothing special to most people, but I'm like, the kid in me is alive inside of this and it's silly. And most people like walk through and are like, cool, you're a giant nerd. But it's like so super special to me. And there's little special things to each of us that we can actually lean into and go like, this is unique and special just to me. No one even may not even understand it, or few people may understand it.
Yeah.
But it's special to me and you can lean in and just soak that in.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something?
Well, I was just thinking about how cool it is that, so me and Pete have known each other since we were 7, and we dreamed of like doing life with our husbands and whatever together. And then we got married, and it was like you and Johnny both liked each other, as in like you were like cordial and nice. Like neither of you were like, I don't like him. Yeah. But there wasn't like a bond there.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about like, that was fine. Like you kind of just accept what is.
Yeah.
So me and Pete accepted that our lives were what they were and it was how it was. But the last few years, Johnny going through his doing the courses, starting to connect to his feelings.
Yeah. Changed Johnny a lot.
Changed him. And then at
incredible change.
At the same time, you going through what the life seasons were for you. And so now you and him are really bonded.
Yes.
And you and Pete's family are really bonded. And I remember when we married and being like really sad that you weren't connected to Pete's family.
Yeah. And they weren't the most open. And Doug has admitted that too. Is like,
sure,
they weren't most receptive and I wasn't most open.
Yeah. You guys were both idiots, to be honest. I would go back and chew y'all out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every single one of you. But the concept being like, that was a relationship I never would have known would be something that you'd feel really safe in, that you'd love so much.
Yeah. Between like, Johnny and Doug, you know, your spiritual dad, like I'm like, he is one of my favorite people and been one of the most monumental pieces of my heart in this last year or two. And I just love him so much.
Yeah. But those are things like you just don't see coming. You don't see like, oh, actually they're going to go through some hard shit and we're going to go through some hard shit. And through it, we're all going to become better humans. And we're going to get a deep connection that we've always wanted and didn't know would even be an option. Yeah.
And it's this extra extended family that's been inscribed into my life where I'm like, oh, you feel like you're biological.
Yeah.
And I got to choose you.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, did you have any other small things? Otherwise, we're going to bounce out of this. But I do want to say this. I'm so thankful for this podcast. This podcast has been a place for me to even just get to have something steady weekly that I get to show up with. And I have met some of the most loving, kind, generous, enjoyable people ever through this podcast, because I literally have had so many exchanges of people sending emails, sending in their stories, us having conversations, random like connection point. Like it's crazy what's come out of this podcast. And it's, again, it was birthed the same way that like the Liberation Project was birthed, which is like, I just want to talk and I enjoy having this. Let's do this together, Abs, and let's build this together with no real like motivation except for to just love people, share what's going on in our hearts, and like the payout of connection and stuff like that we've gotten from it has been incredible.
Yeah. You know, it makes me think I have so many more things I want to talk about being grateful for. We should do that later.
Do another one.
Well, I actually just meant like me and you.
Oh yeah.
Talk through. There's so many things to be thankful for. And it really helps you feel like, no, things are helping for good. Like you can just, when you start to recap things, it really does help you be like, I was just thinking when you're saying that, I'm like, I'm a part of the podcast, The Connected Life, where we're really trying to help create connection in people. And then I work for this company, the Adventure Challenge, and we're trying to help people create connection. And like, so I get to have my hand in two different businesses that are trying to create connection on the planet. And how crazy is that? That's beautiful and so life-giving and hopeful. And yeah, there's just so much that you never know. You never know the pathway and how it's going to lead.
You don't. And this is the last thing I want to say. I turned 40 this year.
Yeah.
And it could have been a year for a lot of people feel miserable when they hit certain landmarks and like question life, regrets, I don't know, all kinds of stuff. But this year I had so many cool experiences, from watching the 40th anniversary of a G.I. Joe movie, was nerding out in Chico with some people, and to going to watch One Republic, one of my favorite band of all time, and with my friend Marcus.
Getting an ice bath,
randomly getting to go on a trip with Brian that we talked about on the men's retreat on this podcast, where that just happened. It was like
the one with Jeremy we talked about on this podcast too.
Where Jeremy came on here. It was like so many things for my 40th year. And I'm just like, man, my 40s are going to be beautiful. My 40th year has been so beautiful. And again, it's not without difficulty. So to kind of wrap this up, like, again, reminding you, like, gratitude is not a relationship with denial.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's actually connecting to many aspects of the human experience and seeing the beauty in the midst of the messiness. And if there's nothing else that you take away from the connected life in general, let it be that there's beauty in the midst of messiness. Like, we are human, we are messy. We'll always keep championing that message. We are all messy. And yet there's beauty to be found in each and every one of us as individuals, as people, and in the lives that we live and in the experiences with others.
Yeah. One last thing I'll say that I'm thankful for. This has surprised me. The amount of people that have found our podcast because people have shared our podcast on Instagram or have posted about us.
Yeah, we don't have a huge social media following. We have an enormous
we also just don't post.
Well, we don't post. We don't do any of that. But literally, people
we're going to, though. Follow us.
But people have been like, the podcast has grown so big based on people sharing.
Yeah. And it blows my mind. The other day, somebody shared, and I reshared it on my thing. They shared and tagged me in it. I reshared it, and 80 people clicked the link of their share.
Oh, wow.
Of what they said about it and did it. And I was like, look, I mean, literally somebody just shared it and 80 people went to listen to it from that one share. And so I just think I felt very loved. Most often the people whose lives that we hear the most transformation, they don't even remember how they saw it. It was just someone of their friends shared it and they decided to watch it. So or listen to it. Thank you guys so much for doing that, for being a part of it.
Thank you for loving us. Thank you for allowing us to be part of your life this year. And thank you for sharing stories with us and the impact and things. Like, it's really cool that this is part of what we get to live in our life.
Yeah.
So we love you guys. Merry Christmas. Again, a belated Christmas. Big new year coming up for you. Happy New Year as it's coming up. We're excited for our whole new year and what this next year is going to have.
Join us with Living Fully Life.
Yeah.
Start your new year with friends who are helping lead you lovingly to love. Lovingly to love.
Lovingly to love. All right, Abby, I'm going to leave. Do you want to stay here? You can stay here, but I'm going away.
Okay, bye.
Bye.